Good afternoon and welcome to the Value Economics Show. Happy Monday. What is the hardest thing to do in 2025? Humans have been forever defined by their ability to do hard things, to transcend the seemingly impossible. Tony Robbins has said rightly that the defining trait of humans is our ability to become resourceful. Brett Weinstein and Heather Heying have affirmed this biologically by stating that the greatest innate skill of mankind is our ability to adapt. Without both, it would have been impossible for humans to move past our base impulses and status in the world to advance to where we are. But we have. Humans have done the impossible over and over again, proving to ourselves that if we set our minds to it, almost anything is achievable. We've achieved godlike power with weapons of war. We can catch rockets in midair after they return from us launching them into the atmosphere. We are currently in the process of decoding the entire human genome to find biological patterns of disease, with the goal of reverse engineering it to eradicate the majority of diseases and pathogens in the world. Given all of these and many more, we like to believe that we have ascended past our ancestors, that we're somehow wiser, more in tune with what it means to be a human being. But this is incorrect. For all of our achievements in the realm of material and technological human advancements, we have also made a serious regression, one that I deem far more important than the atom bomb, CRISPR, and the Mechazilla. Denzel Washington has stated before that humans have a bad habit of confusing movement and progress. While the atomic bomb, CRISPR, and the Mechazilla have all moved our society forwards, they have done little to progress humans in ways that actually matter to the vast majority of people. Which brings us back to the initial question: what quote-unquote hard thing confounds people more than ever in 2025? For many people, the answer to this question is one that has, to be fair, confounded people for centuries: their romantic lives. The romantic arena has always confounded the human heart, mind, and soul for as long as it has existed. King Solomon dedicated a whole book of the Bible to it. Shakespeare wrote some of the most popular plays in human history on it. Entire cottage industries of content have materialized to talk about it. Always a popular topic, dating and romance in general seems to have picked up so much steam that now everyone has an opinion on everything around it, and most often, not good or positive ones. The biggest criticism that has come about with the modern dating scene is that it seems harder today than it ever has before. There has never been a time outside of the present where it has been harder to meet someone, fall in love, start a family, and fill the gap in the human heart, we're told. Something about our culture today is irreparably broken, leaving millions of young men and women sidelined in the dating market, clinging to luck and prayer to bring them their significant other. But we must ask ourselves, especially as young people, is this actually true? Before we examine both sides of the argument, I believe the crux of the answer lies in one word: seems. Dating seems harder today than it ever has before. It seems that the landscape is nearly impossible for young men and women to find a romantic partner that could become a spouse. It seems like a hopeless landscape, particularly to those removed from it who have heard nothing but horror stories about it. I'm here to offer a different opinion, one that is actually helpful and will, God willing, progress the conversation around modern dating instead of contributing to the mass regress in the dating market that we've seen. Dating is, to the contrary of most influencers and opinions out there, not harder than it's ever been. Rather, dating is instead more confusing than it's ever been. This is a very big difference, and one that needs to be spelled out in order to have a proper conversation surrounding it, which we're going to be having today. This will be the part where young people of both sexes object. And what I would say is this: put down your entitlement. You're not special just because you've happened to come of age in the 21st century. It's not harder than your parents or grandparents had it. They had it hard too, just in different ways. Making yourself the victim by singling yourself out by the time you were born is a stupid and weak argument. Get over yourself. Focus on what you can control. You. What we're currently experiencing with our modern dating culture is what Douglas Murray has described as a, quote, great crowd derangement. Men and women as entire demographics are completely debased from the reality of what dating and romance are all about. We do not know what to do with each other, how to treat each other, and what the opposite sex wants. So it's no wonder that we have trouble reaching each other in the process of doing so. So how have we gotten here? How have we gotten to the point of a dual crowd derangement, one in which men and women have grown further apart and more hostile towards one another, instead of coming closer together and wanting to help each other? What has led to this confusion, and who is behind it? It's good to understand first and foremost that while dating has certainly been less confusing, it has always been confusing in general. As Tucker Carlson once stated, men and women at a fundamental level do not understand each other. They never will understand each other because men and women are different. The absurdity of feminism and the gender cult will never change this fact, no matter how often they yell into the void of social media or street protests about it being so. The goal of romance, then, if we're following this blueprint, is to make an effort to understand the person you're in a relationship with or pursuing a relationship with to understand that person. The better you know that person, the better you understand them, the better your romantic life will be. Understanding and confusion are the antithesis of each other, which speaks to just how askew the dating market has gotten. Therefore, our crisis of confusion around dating is therefore a crisis of understanding. There are, in my estimation, 3 factors that are most responsible for this crisis of understanding. First, the very definition of dating has been redefined and reoriented, which has enabled an entirely new set of incentives that don't match up with the purpose of dating. Second, those incentives have pulled up a new set of dating narratives, primarily manifesting in apps and influencers that have further muddied the waters. Third, those narratives have been adopted into an adversarial, conflict-based relationship between men and women, which has led to men and women, over time, to despise each other. Let's start with the redefinition problem. In our current culture of narcissism, what we have found is people not falling in love with other people, but instead falling more in love with themselves. The questions we've asked over time have increasingly become more self-centered and less other-centered. For all of our big talk of caring more about other people these days, this is not the case at an individual level at all. Thus, the number one question we must ask in any arena, relationships or not, is the following. How is this going to benefit me? How is this going to make me happy? How is this going to fulfill me? These are the questions that those in the dating marketplace are asking now more than ever, which is also why they are more miserable in the dating marketplace now more than ever. This is where a hardcore reality check is needed. For the entirety of romantic existence up until very recently, these beliefs never crossed anyone's mind. The reason is because they couldn't cross anyone's mind. Dating, romance, and marriage were once a necessity, not a luxury. If you were happy, that was great. But other things were more important, more influential, more central to romantic partnership. And what were these things? Most presciently, meaning. Dating, ultimately, is a process to discover more meaning in your life through service to another person. It's not about you. It's about the other person, of who you choose to couple up with. The reason why so many couples don't make it, the reason why the divorce numbers, though widely disputed and mostly inaccurate, are what they are, is because people take the opposite approach. They believe it is about them, not the other person. This can manifest in many ways: money, sex, the raising of children, whatever. But the backdrop is still the same. If you do not do what Jesus said and die to yourself, you will ultimately end up killing your relationship. If you hold on to your narcissism, your selfishness, your unrighteous ways of living, you will destroy any and every relationship that you have, particularly romantic ones. It may not happen right away, but it will happen, guaranteed. Given this mass redefining of the purpose of romantic relationships towards a self-centered approach, this has opened the floodgates for the narratives around romantic relationships to become corrupted. Malicious actors, always finding something to exploit, have seen this split and upending of normative romantic relationships defined by traditional values, and have found their ways to increase the division for no other reason than to achieve greater power and profit for themselves. The 2 primary offenders to this are dating app manufacturers and both male and female social media influencers. And let's begin with our technocratic romantic overlords. The dating app market is one of the biggest and most competitive ones on the planet. There are dozens of them, all with quote-unquote different purposes, that compete in the most cynical way for our time and attention, far more than traditional social media companies do. The goal of dating apps for the people who make them is to initiate connection between men and women that lead to happy, long-term romantic relationships. But this is a lie. They do not mean this at all. They do not want this to happen. They cannot escape what they are, a social media company. The strategy of running a successful social media company is the following: accumulate users for free by creating an addictive and awesome product, and then upsell them via advertising or premium memberships. Dating apps have done this to near perfection. Hijacking brain chemistry in what most deem the most consequential and sensitive area of their lives, these technocrats have promised an unpromisable thing. Designed to be deleted, as Hinge says. We're different, says Holy and Upward, the 2 biggest quote-unquote Christian dating apps in the world, all run by Match Group. We empower women, shrieks Whitney Wolf of Bumble. All lies. Every single one of them. Dating apps do not accomplish a single one of these things, nor do they want to. There has been no greater tool of animosity and division between men and women than the mass adoption of dating apps, which seek to divide men and women by keeping them from one another. They're all talk, no action, at the expense of your heart and your wallet. What's more toxic on top of dating apps is the dating influencer class, as defined by feminist women and red pill men. These two idiotic demographics, capitalizing on the great dating crowd derangement, have further blown up the narrative by adding to the confusion, stirring the pot, and ruffling the feathers of men and women by pouring gas on the fire via our social media feeds and YouTube algorithms. The motive of these influencers is the same as our dating app companies: power and profit. These liars, these false prophets, those who claim to be wise but instead are fools, as Romans says, prey on the misery of the modern dating market by injecting it with inflammatory and outright nonsensical information, adding to the confusion, making sure that people stay confused. Like our dating app companies, they do not want young Americans to get better. Instead, they want them to stay where they are, desperate, hopeless, and nihilistic, constantly craving for more, hoping for a solution that will never fill a hole in their hearts. Ultimately, what the redefinition of the purpose of dating in these toxic narratives lead to is what has defined our dating market for the past decade: an adversarial relationship between men and women. Men and women in today's world see each other not as complements, but as adversaries to overcome, as things to conquer. They don't see a need to partner together, because to seek partnership would be to lose the game that has been constructed around them. It's hard to think of a more destructive and evil thing than this. Men and women are meant to complement and help one another, not tear one another down. But yet we've abandoned this totally. The way you get a world where men and women don't want to come together to form marriages and families is to convince the other side that in order to be fulfilled in a relationship, you have to win in the relationship. This is wrong on either side of the coin. But yet so many men and women believe this. It's somehow a loss to give up your own hedonism and selfishness, to care for another person more than you care about your stupid career or self-improvement routine or yoga class that you attend on Thursday night. It's oppressive, they say. You have to love yourself first before you can love others, they claim. All lies, all proven by data to make your lives worse, not better. This is an unsustainable path forward, which is why we're going to be spending all of today's show talking about this ever-important and prescient topic. We must systematically break down today's dating dilemma down to see what's actually going on with both men and women, so we can attempt to come together to fix the problem. There will be, and we are already seeing, massive consequences that will threaten us not only individually, but as a culture and a species. What are some of these consequences? Well, let's take the falling birth rates around the world, for example. This has been, of many, my pet obsession for years. At the rate we're currently at, there will be almost no more South Koreans in 100 years. The United States' birth rate is 25% below the replacement rate and dropping, which will lead to massive disruptions in government debt, the labor force, and the overall stability of our country, to just name a few things. The most appalling statistic that I've ever seen lands in this arena as well. As articulated first in our 2018 report by Morgan Stanley and confirmed by multiple sources since, if a woman is single and childless by the age of 30, the odds of her ever having a child drop to 50%. A coin flip odds after the age of 30, whether half the women in our society, the only people who can have children, will have children. These are not good odds, and they are continuing to ratchet up in the opposite direction. Young men, for their part, are continuing to spiral into apathy and despondency. A record number of working-age young men are not looking for work. They'd rather collect a disability check or live off their government or their parents. They're experiencing what some asinine people are dubbing a quote-unquote quarter-life crisis in their mid-20s. Little do they know that meaning, as Jordan Peterson has said, comes from responsibility, i.e., at that age particularly, getting a job, getting married, and having children. This crisis of purpose has led to both men and women falling apart romantically. If we're to survive, it needs to stop. We need to boldly and honestly discuss not only the problems, but the solution to the problems of the dating market. Men and women are meant to help one another. We're not enemies. Anyone who says otherwise, and remotely similar, hates you. They do not want you to do well. It's time we put that narrative to bed, because it's long past its expiration date. Okay. So speaking of dating apps, they've been in the news recently. I don't know if you guys have heard this. You probably have by this point. So the dating app market, like I said, is I think it's demonic, to be honest. And I'm not totally against dating apps, by the way, but I think that it's It's a distraction primarily. It's something that's used to divide people, and I'm not for division, particularly in the dating market. And I think that I think it's a problem. But Tinder, the OG dating app, the first one that I got on almost 10 years ago, is in the news now because Tinder, I don't know if it's the most popular one still. I was talking with my dad actually about this the other day. I'll get to that more in a second. But I believe Tinder is still the most popular dating app in the world. I know Bumble and Hinge are kind of up there, but I think Tinder is like the stereotypical one that people use and all those sorts of things. But Tinder is in the news recently because they have now made a lot of people angry with a new filter that they have debuted. So for those who are not aware of dating apps, there are filters that you can use. A lot of them you have to buy via premium versions. I said that in my monologue. But there are things you can filter, like if you only want to date, if you're a Muslim, if you only want to date Muslim men or Muslim women, for example, there's a app or a filter you can filter that out by. If you only want to date women, if you only want to date men, there's a filter for that, obviously. But there are also upsells. You can say, hey, I only want to date a woman who's a liberal. I only want to date a man who is 50 miles away from me, etc. And some of these are free. Some of them you have to pay for just to kind of find your quote-unquote perfect match, which is a psyop in and of itself. We can get into that maybe later. But now Tinder has made a lot of people upset with a new filter they have come out with recently. So Tinder a couple weeks ago launched a height filter for women. So this has been a meme, essentially, in the dating app market for a very long time. Because, there is a kind of a widely expressed philosophy, not a philosophy, but a widely expressed contention that a lot of women, and women have said this, by the way, so it's not totally out of the blue or totally wrong, but women will not date a guy that's under 6 feet tall, which is, I believe, 80-something% of the population. I think I read that once, which is a total self-own, and this is why women are struggling in many ways, but I digress. So Tinder puts this new height filter on their app, and now it has become a reality and a new way for discrimination, which is what this is, particularly if it's against a minority of the population, in the dating market for women. And I believe this is, and I think people are finally starting to see this now, and I think this is kind of just the most over-the-top thing that has pushed the narrative over the edge. This is what accentuates everything that is wrong about dating apps and how it has been a cultural psyop by our technocrat overlords that they've pulled on the world. Because, again, your height has nothing to do with romantic compatibility. Nothing. It's a lot like, it would be something as like a similar thing for men, and I'm just going to throw this out there, is like, I don't want to date a woman that's over 120 pounds. That would be very, very similar in terms of how men and women cross-reference in that similar category. Women look for height, men look for weight, if we're being honest about it. So guy says, you know what? I don't want to date a whale. I've been catfished too many times. Throw this out there, whatever. And that would obviously be an outrageous thing to kind of say. And it would be like, okay, like that's kind of pushing it too far or whatever. But this just kind of shows, I think, that dating apps don't work at the end of the day because we are incentivizing for the wrong things. Arthur Brooks has talked about this. A lot of people have talked about this. And I do respect some people in this world. Logan Ury, I believe, is still the director of relationship science or tech science over our whatever her department is over at Hinge. And she's written a book about this. I think it's pretty good, called How to Not Die Alone. So go ahead and get that book if you want to. But she has kind of made excuses for this in terms of saying it's like, well, like it's just about preferences, etc. But it's like, is it about preferences at the end of the day? Or are we actually trying to get people off the app, as Hinge says? I don't think that's true. By the evidence, I don't think that's true. Even though, do most people in romantic relationships meet on an app or online? Yes. Do most conversations with romantic partners start online? Yes, etc. And so this leads to a conversation that I was having with my dad a couple days ago. We hadn't talked over the weekend, and he had called me and just wanted to catch up and stuff. So I was talking with my dad about just personal stuff. And I used to be very hesitant about opening up to my parents about my personal life. I didn't let them in really at all because it was really painful for me, to be honest. And I was really insecure about my dating life and kind of how I was acting in that space and all those type of things. And so I would kind of just tell them to screw off, for lack of a better term. But I've gotten better with that. At least I think I have. And so my dad was kind of like talking to me about various things, and he brought up the apps, and he didn't know how they worked, and as most parents don't. So I gave him the breakdown, and I think this kind of led to a lot of the things that we're going to be talking about today. So the reason why and this is the reason I told my dad, the reason why the apps do not work for the vast majority of people, and the reason why their incentive structure is flawed, is because they have a fundamental flaw inside of the system of the dating app culture. And the fundamental flaw is that they feed all of the worst aspects of human behavior, and they reward none of the good ones, which I think the height filter is a perfect example of. If you talk to someone in a 60-year marriage and they're on year 61 of being married together, I can guarantee you almost with a shadow of a doubt, the woman in that relationship, probably in her 80s or 90s by this point, is not going to really give a shit about her husband's height. And the man's probably not going to care much about her wife's weight in terms of 80s, 90s. People get old, people shrink, people get fat. It's just kind of the way that things happen, essentially. And so what this does is it incentivizes everything on short-term mating strategies. David Buss has talked a lot about this in the evolutionary psychology field, but let's just keep it high level for this sake of argument. They are not setting people up for long-term success in marriages. They're not. Because the goal, like I said, a dating app, and again, we've kind of cloaked this in this fancy vernacular in terms of even we've renamed it, but dating apps are social media sites. They're social media companies. And if anyone tries to tell you that they're not, again, they're lying to you. And you need to say that that person is unserious and stop listening to them. So the goal of a social media company is to accumulate users and keep those users on the apps. They drive traffic to advertising revenue. You can upsell them on premium memberships, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's how these things work. And they eventually get subscriptions. X has one, Meta has one for Instagram and for a bunch of other things, I believe. And now dating apps have them where you can say, hey, I want unlimited likes, I want, super likes, I want all these kind of bizarre twists and names that they have on all these features or whatever. And so the goal is not to get you off the dating app. The goal is to keep you there, because if the goal were to get you off the dating app, they would not exist. I believe that actually these people can solve the dating problem, but they don't want to. Why? Because they want you to stay on the dating app. They want to feed the beast. They want to feed the machine, as like any business does. I'm not mad at it. But what I am mad, and what a lot of people should be mad at, is that they are not honest about the business model. And they are not transparent about what the business model is doing to young people, primarily in terms of getting on these dating apps. And so what this leads to is a binary set of problems based on sex. So in terms of splitting this up, and dating apps do not affect men and women equally. They affect men and women differently, and we'll get into that now. So women have a different problem with dating apps than men do. And this is what makes the problem even more complicated, and this is why I said in my monologue, and I'm going to say again now, that I believe the dating apps primarily exist to divide men and women and not to bring men and women together, because they are incentivizing this problem based on those short-term strategies and not incentivized for long-term strategies that actually involve men and women coupling up, marrying each other, etc. So women, by and large, generalizing, have the problem of choice, and men have the problem of scarcity. What does that mean? So men, due to things like the height filter, which is stupid, are getting crowded out by the choosiness of women. Now, this is where a lot of men go off the rails here. Women are allowed to have preferences. They're allowed to be choosy. They have a lot more to lose in the dating market than men do. They're less strong. They can get assaulted, raped, killed easier in all those different veins. They could get pregnant. They could, their societal shame that stretches back thousands of years, etc. So women have developed over time. This is kind of what David Buss talks about too, all the evolutionary psychology folks. They have moved up in terms of saying, hey, I've seen all these things that have happened to women in the past, so I'm only going to select for maximum choosiness to best protect me and my interests, which I don't think we can get mad at women about that, by the way. I think that women have every right to do that and every right to demand that. I think the people that say that they don't are kind of stupid, to be honest. And so the men that say that are kind of stupid, because of course women want that. It's in their nature, and it's something they shouldn't be blamed for. And so what this leads to, essentially, is that women have the problem of choice, like I mentioned earlier, which, so what happens? I remember I was talking with my cousin about this. I actually wanted to test it on her. So my cousin, who's a lovely woman, she's very pretty, she's nice, she's smart, got a good job, very well-grounded in her values, etc. She's awesome. I love my cousin. And so she got on an app for the first time about a year and a half ago. And she ended up meeting a guy, and they've been together for about a year, and everyone is basically thinking they're probably going to get married sometime next year. So praise God for that and everything like that. So that's essentially how it was. And so I don't see my cousins that often anymore because we're all spread out and we have our own lives and stuff. But we were in town around like Thanksgiving or Christmas. I forget what it was last year. And so I didn't really ask her about this because everyone got blown up because she's like or everyone blew her up rather because she's really the first person out of I have 8 other cousins rather. And then I have my 2 siblings. So there's 11 of us in general that are cousins in that relationship. And she was the first one to really have a serious romantic relationship that has spanned more than a couple of months. And so people were blowing up and saying like, is this guy the one? Is this guy it? And so I didn't want to, keep spamming her inbox, for lack of a better term, in terms of asking her about this. But eventually we kind of just start talking and I'm like, hey, like, is this guy the real deal? Whatever. And she's like, yeah, like I really like him. I think that it's going to work out. And I said, okay, that's great. That's awesome. And I asked her, I'm like, so I'm so curious. Like, because she met this man that she's dating now on Hinge. And I asked her, and I said, like, I've heard this from so many of my female friends. I want to make sure that it's true for you too, because I want to just confirm something that I thought was going to be true. I said, how many likes did you end up getting on Hinge before you matched with your current boyfriend? And she said, Sam, I got hundreds of guys that liked me. Hundreds of them blowing up my DMs every single day. And I said, well, that must have been really disorienting in many ways. And it must have been really hard to find your boyfriend that you currently have. You probably got lucky. She's like, it was so overwhelming. It was so overstimulating. I didn't know what to do. I felt like a jerk for kind of saying no to all these people and all these men, excuse me. And so what this leads to is that men are shooting their shot at everybody. Men are a lot less choosy than women are. Men are essentially, especially if they're driven by short-term strategy and they just want to hook up, one night stand, whatever, they are shooting at everybody. They're shooting every single woman that comes in their algorithm that's somewhat hot, bang, 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 bang. They're liking everybody. And so what happens if you're a woman who is deemed attractive on a dating app, you get blown up. You get nuked in terms of your dating apps, in terms of the matches you get on dating apps, which lends itself to the impossibility, as my cousin was alluding to, of trying to pick a needle in the haystack. And like, no wonder, because if you're trying to find a husband, like my cousin is, she said she wasn't in it to mess around or just date around or whatever. I think she's probably going to end up marrying this guy, to be honest. And so she was looking for a long-term romantic partner. She was looking for a boyfriend, looking for a husband that leads to marriage. And so this is really hard for anyone to get right, but particularly for women who are getting spammed by hundreds of if not thousands of men who are trying to either date them, hook up with them, have sex with them, whatever. It's just trying to pick a needle in the haystack, which therefore women are like, whoa, I need to kind of zone out here and really kind of pick which one I have. I have a lot of options and most likely a lot of good options, but I want to make sure that I pick right, which therefore women select for generally men of higher status, men who are taller, men who make more money, men who are more handsome, men who have better jobs, men who are in better shape, etc., which are not correlated to the average and below average men who are on these apps. So therefore, what this means, and this will lead into the men's problem of scarcity, it crowds out most men from the dating market because women just can't pick, and a bunch of men are left out in the cold, which is why men really struggle on dating apps. Dating apps are a lot better, quote unquote, in some ways for women than they are for men for this reason. So it heightens the chance, and also as kind of a cell phone for women, it kind of heightens the chance of them dating a psychopath too, because if a lot of men are incentivized and they have this kind of digital harem of like 20 women who are really attractive around them and they're saying, I like you, I like this, I like that, I like whatever, then they are essentially just kind of incentivizing for like a Gaston type, as Jordan Peterson says, a snake to come into their dating app matches and kind of say, okay, I'm just going to take this thing over. While men are feeling more despondent because they're like, well, women don't like me, I'm not getting any likes, etc., which could not be true. Women are just like, yo, this is a lot. I have 300 guys in my inbox. I'm DMing like 5 guys at once. Like this is really tough for me to manage, and I'm overwhelmed. I don't really know what to do. And so it leads to a lot of just a different problem, but a similar problem in some ways too. But the good news is that, as I mentioned earlier, I believe this narrative is finally kind of failing. I believe it's failing. And I think history is now kind of repeating itself in more ways than one. because dating apps, in my belief, will soon be extinct. It will take another half decade to a decade to do that, but they will go extinct. They will go extinct. And the reason why I think they're going to go extinct is because people are finally, like I mentioned, starting to notice this problem. They're starting to notice this problem with the dating apps. And what is going to replace them, I think this is something I talked about with my dad too, is going to be AI matchmaking services. And hear me out if you have never heard of one of these. So essentially what this is, it is I think matchmaking services have existed for a long time. Like I think there were probably mail order ones or whatever that you could do back in the day. But what's happening now with the advancement of AI, I actually know, a shout out to the Keeper team over Jake Kozlowski, Wes Myers, all the guys over at Keeper Matchmaking, Luis Perry, who's a friend of theirs, who I love and has been really a champion in this space. They are now they're now creating these algorithms that are built off of massive AI models that are creating these matchmaking services based on AI to match people together based off of the algorithm that they've created. So all of this to say, we are going back to arranged marriages. Arranged marriages are going to be a massive thing. We're not going to call them arranged marriages because that's quote unquote regressive or whatever, but it's going to be the algorithms that dictate the arranged marriage. Instead of families, instead of parents, we are going to be led to romantic relationships by AI in the future. And I think actually, and it's working. Like the Keeper team, 1 in 7, I believe the current statistic is. I could be wrong about this. I'll send this to them afterwards and see whether this is accurate or not. But they're 1 in 7 of their first dates lead to a long-term relationship or marriage. It's pretty good odds because people like me, I've been on, probably at least 100 dating app dates over my time, probably a lot more than that. I have had probably 2 of them that have worked. It's a lot better than 1 in 7. 1 in 50, if we're going to take the minimum number of the bend, is a lot worse than 1 in 7. And so if the AI companies are able to crack this, which I think that they will, I think the dating app market's going to go away like that. I think people are just going to say, you know what? And it's not right now, the way that these matchmaking sites, they make money is that they demand a high ticket fee at the start of it, like a couple $1,000. And they say, you know what, we're going to enter you into our algorithm. We'll try to match you with somebody, etc., and we'll get off and running. And so that's what's going to replace apps in the future. But this is a good thing, I think, by the way. I think this is going to be actually much more effective. I've actually been a bigger fan of arranged marriages than a lot of other people. I think arranged marriages actually do us a lot of good. But in my view, this is just something we need to deal with in the meantime. So apps are not going anywhere for the near term. Like I said, probably around another 5 to 10 years, we're going to have to deal with them. But I believe that this is going to be a very positive thing. But for now, that is why the apps don't work. And that is why the apps largely are a psyop to keep people addicted and on a social media site rather than to get them into a marriage or a romantic relationship. But dating apps aren't real life. As we've seen, dating apps are only kind of a bridge into the broader dating sphere that we see now. And I want to talk now about men and women separately. That was kind of men and women combined. I want to kind of divert it and split, and then I want to come back together at the end. So I want to talk about men first, because a lot of men right now, in my life especially, I've seen a lot of, and actually, by the way, I shouldn't even say that. I have a lot of guys who have been successful in the dating market recently. Like half of my closest friends in Austin are married at this point, or in a serious romantic relationship, which is awesome. And so, but a lot of men who I see and I talk with, more on an acquaintance level or just hey, I'll see you at church or whatever, they're really struggling when it comes to finding dates and finding women to like them. And so I want to get into why this is happening and why I believe that men are struggling. So men, as mentioned, have been displaced in overwhelming numbers by apps and other cultural factors. We talked about this in last week's episode about the masculinity crisis and why is it happening and what's going on and all those things. And so the culture has not been a favorable one to men over the last couple of years, over the last lot of years. And it's turning now, like I mentioned. I think it's getting better, which is a good thing. But in terms of the dating market, this has been, I think, one of the most evident areas where this problem of men not doing well has really metastasized. And I want to talk about that now. So it is essentially due to this displacement of men in the dating market, it has led them to essentially just not know what to do when it comes to the dating market at all. Men don't know how to date now. And the modern masculinity narrative that has thrown men into chaos for the last decade, which again is thankfully clearing up now, has done a lot of damage to men. It's done a lot of damage to men because it's made them regress socially, it's made them regress culturally, it has made them less attractive to women, etc. And it's starting to clear up now, and we're starting to, I think, see an upswing here. I actually think a lot women are going to go through a similar crisis in the next 10 years, and men are going to be on the upswing, just as kind of women were earlier on, but that's beside the point. But I think the main problem of men in the dating market today is really the same as for women, who we'll talk about in a second. And I think that problem is an external locus of control. If men struggle dating now, largely what I see, and this is anecdotal, and I've seen some data on this, but it's anecdotal from my sense as well, is they have a very victim-based mentality when it comes to dating. They outsource their success in the dating market to outside factors. The apps don't like me, women don't like me, it's too tough out there, it should be easier for me, etc., 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 etc. And so I want to say this before men fly off the handle, because I know I'll get some comments here. While it is an undeniable fact that men have had it hard in the dating market, in some ways harder than women, it is also true that men have used that as an excuse to remove all of their ownership from the equation. We have overcorrected. We have spotted a problem, which is a legitimate one, by saying that, hey, some things culturally with the apps, with women today, etc., that is a problem, and we should fix that problem. But what we have done is we have swung the pendulum way over and said, you know what? I don't have to do anything, and women should just like me for who I am. And that's an issue. That's a very big issue, because that is not a sustainable model at all for achieving what you want to achieve in the dating market. It's not. Men have blamed the culture and women and dating apps and everything that's external from them for far too long, which has led men to not put any onus and ownership on themselves to fix their own problems. We have turned ourselves as men into victims of a market, of the dating market. We have basically said, you know what, we have no control. We don't have any say in what happens to us. We, it's all everyone else's fault. I don't have to be self-aware. I don't have to do X, Y, Z. I don't have to do whatever. It's all someone else's fault. And I cannot think of a single narrative that is more destructive to a man than he not being in control of his own life. I cannot think of a single more destructive narrative than that. Because if a man believes that, then it's curtains, especially in the dating market. If he believes that way in the dating market, God knows he probably has the same issue in his fitness. His money's probably not right. His career probably isn't going the way it wants to. For men especially, this is very, very important to get right. For men, the ability to achieve success in the dating market is a major key to his self-worth. And you shouldn't find your self-worth in women or in dating. You should find, in my opinion, you should find your self-worth in Jesus or in something else if you're not a believer. But if you're a believer, find your worth in Jesus first and then find your worth in lesser things like a romantic relationship, for example. But a lot of men are driven by this. I have a joke that I say all the time that literally every single thing that men do to improve their lives is to impress women. So if men can't impress women, what does that say about the rest of their lives? It's probably not going great. So what this has led to, understandably, because of this victim mentality, it has led to a bitterness and a resentment from men in the dating market towards the culture and towards women. So they hate the world, they're bitter towards the world, and they hate, they're saying, the world is out to get me, I can't get a job, it's capitalism's fault, it's the market's fault, it's women's fault, it's my mom's fault, it's my dad's fault, it's that whatever who dumped me last year, it's her fault, whatever. And it's also led to them particularly get angry at women in this regard. Oh, modern women today, they have all these problems. Why can't women just be like they were when my dad was dating or when my grandpa was dating? All of those narratives, they're very, very prevalent now, and it's very troubling to watch this. Which this leads because men are now so dejected in so many ways. They are so fed up with kind of how this has gone for them that it has led them to largely check out of the dating market, of being in the game, of trying to be on a dating app, of trying to go on dates, of trying to ask women out in person, fun fact, etc., all of those things. So it's led them to not take action in the dating market itself, and instead they find people who are in that same bitter and resentful mindset, mostly online, and it leads them to get brainwashed by primarily incel communities, red pill content, etc., that has dragged them down this rabbit hole further. And that's a death spiral. I'll say that right now, that's a death spiral. There are hardly any men, if you get far enough down that rabbit hole, you can't climb out. Your brain chemistry literally will rewire itself. It literally will rewire itself. So this is not, it's a major problem. This is not good. So what men need to do in opposition to this narrative, in opposition to what is currently happening, and this death spiral that men are going down to in terms of romantic relationships, what men need to do is they need to step up. They need to step up to the plate, and they need to take back that locus of control and wrest it back inside of themselves. Because what this has become is a massive shirking of responsibility on the part of men. Men have said that I don't want the responsibility of becoming someone that women can be attracted to, and instead I'm going to blame everybody else. I'm going to take myself out of the equation, put myself in a position where I can be miserable with other miserable men, and then potshot women and dating apps and the culture or hypergamy or whatever from a mile away and talk about it on Twitter or something or a Reddit thread. And the hard reality for a lot of men is this. Women do not find the majority of modern men attractive because the majority of modern men are not attractive. That is the cold, hard reality of it. Women do not find you attractive, most likely because you're not attractive. If everyone else is saying one thing and you're saying another thing, the data shows that that group is right and you're wrong. And it's not because of some psyop or whatever that's out of your control by like these puppet masters, these non-existent, the invisible they, as I like to call it, these non-existent puppet masters that are kind of dictating the dating market or whatever, like feeding all this stuff to women. We're going to talk about women in a second, but it's not because of some cultural psyop or master plan by some diabolical like henchman dude in the clouds or whatever. It's because of you. It's because of you that you're not attractive. It's because of you that women don't like you. It's your fault. But the good news is it's your responsibility also. So to combat this, what men need to do, instead of shirking responsibility and saying the control is not inside of my system, reel it back in. The control is in your system. It is in your control. It is your responsibility. And what is your responsibility to do? It's your responsibility to make yourself attractive. It is your responsibility as a man to become, for example, self-reliant, get a job, start a company, do something to make money, get off your ass and start working and doing something and becoming skilled so you can earn money and maybe get an apartment or buy a house or live with somebody or co-rent with somebody or whatever. Get in better shape, join a gym, start to get all the bad stuff out of your fridge and your pantry. Don't have anything in your pantry probably because all the stuff in your pantry is probably bad for you. It's got preservatives in it. Get it out of there. Eat better food. Stop going out and getting milkshakes every single night. I like milkshakes. Stop getting them every single night. You don't need them. You don't need them. Trust me. I was there for a long time. You don't need them. Trust me. Go work out. Lift heavy weights. Hit a punching bag. Get on a mat and roll jiu-jitsu. Something. Communicate better. Talk to women. Talk to women. That's the best thing to do to kind of get better at this whole thing. Actually talk to women. Women are not as bad as men think that they are in these spaces. They're not. Women are nice for the most part. They're very nice people. They're not some kind of like demonic, fairy, like, not fairy, fury types that the Greeks believed or whatever. They're not Jezebel for the most part. Most women are nice, I think. Communicate better. Talk to women. Get a coach to learn how to talk to women if you need to. Talk to a friend who knows how to talk to women. Get better at communicating. Increase your worthiness to women by increasing your worth to yourself. When you become a leader in your own life, when you become someone who is worth being followed in your own life, you will attract people. Men and women will be attracted to you. Now, you're hitting on one side of the fence here if you're a guy, hopefully. And so you'll attract women. But you need to become the person that women are attracted to in order to attract women. It does not happen by itself. It does not happen by itself. So if you think that you can get away with not having responsibility for your own life and not saying that it's like, well, it's my responsibility to change, newsflash, you're wrong. Women, however, are not going to get off easy. What I found in this current culture is that women do get off easy when it comes to their struggles dating. We talked about this last week with the idiot Tommy Lahren, who somehow has a Fox News. Well, a lot of stupid people are employed by Fox News, but Tommy Lahren and Laura Ingraham were talking about this last week, and we talked about that last week, and which is ridiculous and stupid, and they should be ashamed of themselves for that. It's a shameful thing. It's a sexist thing to say. But while much of the onus has been placed at the feet of men, what has not been said in vast majority of mainstream conversations around dating is that women, plot twist, are half the problem when it comes to romantic relationships between men, one half, women, one half. Women are one half. And I'm a little bit upset that women have not been held to the proper level of account for their part and contribution to the problem. And it's time that we address that, and we're going to address it. We're not going to run from that conversation. So women have contributed to the process of modern dating in far greater ways than most of them are willing to admit. Not more than men, not less than men. It's an equal opportunity shitstorm. Let's just put it that way. In far greater ways than people have been scared to admit, women have contributed to this issue. They have contributed to this problem. This is not about hurting feelings. And for the guys that are going to dunk on women in the comments, hear this first. This is not about hurting women to make you feel better about yourself. That's called sadism, by the way. And you're a psychopath probably if you get off on people getting hurt. So you should get that checked out. You should go to a therapist. But this is about telling the truth. Okay? Telling the truth about what women have done to contribute to this problem. Telling the truth about ways that women have helped this problem expedite. This is about telling the truth. And we're going to tell the truth today. So women, like men, have been poisoned. I use that word deliberately, poisoned with bad narratives. The biggest of which is feminism. Gasps from women, probably. Feminism is destructive. It is the worst thing, I believe, that has happened to women, at least in this space, ever. So you can have it all. You don't need a man. You can get all the things that you want all at the same time. Megyn Kelly, who I love, Tommy Lahren, who I don't love at all, to be honest, Laura Ingraham, all these women that are kind of, in a way, parroting this narrative. They are all incorrect. They are all wrong. And by the way, all the leftist feminists, they're very wrong about this because they probably don't even believe that women are women, but that's a whole other conversation. This is wrong. This is an incorrect ideology to have. This has poisoned women, for both women and for men. And because the well of femininity has been so poisoned, women have used this to treat men with hostility, with unfairness, with ingratitude, which has led a large portion of them to be unattracted to the women who have this mindset. They're unattractive. So again, the same thing with men. Women, if men do not find you attractive, if you're struggling to date, it is not a all men problem. It is not a men are trash problem. That's another narrative that I'm glad it's died, at least mostly. It is not a these men problem. It is a you problem, honey. It is a you problem. You got to fix that. Because if you don't fix it, you're going to have the same problem over and over again. And you're going to get bitter. And you're going to get resentful. So let me get into this. Women are now, because of technology, this is actually a really interesting binary. When I was writing this, or doing my prep for the show, I thought about this. I never thought about it in this way, but I think it's really interesting to kind of examine. Women are now kind of in a split. They're in kind of a duality here. Because of technology, women are more visually attractive than ever before, with filters, with advanced things they do to their face. Or I really don't know how where that works, but now apparently it's pretty good. And all of the stuff with like just different ways of doing makeup and different ways of presenting yourself and things like that. Different clothes they can buy, different ways they can go about their social media and stuff. They have never been more visually attractive than before. Like if you look at a picture of women in the 50s compared to women now, it's like, whoa. And I'm not saying that, and there were a lot of beautiful women back in the day, I'm sure. But in terms of like oh my gosh, like everything is perfect about every woman can be perfect. They just do this and that and whatever. It's never been like this ever. And so women now are more visually attractive for the most part than ever before. But also, because of this value system that they've adopted, this outgrowth of feminism in terms of the way that women perceive themselves, even quote-unquote conservative women like Tomi Lahren and Megyn Kelly and Laura Ingraham, they have never been, women meaning, more emotionally and spiritually ugly to men. So it's like when you break through the glass, when you break glass in case of emergency, and you see, wow, that woman's hot. And you go up to her and you look at and you get underneath the surface just a little bit, you poke just a little bit, and you're like, whoa, I want nothing to do with you at all. I cannot tell you how many men have talked to me. It's like, hey man, I went on a date with that girl last week, and I'm like, oh yeah, she's pretty and she seemed nice, whatever. He's like, dude, never again. never again am I going to put myself in that position. I said, why? And he's like, dude, I started talking to her for more than 5 minutes, and it was like a car wreck. I couldn't look away, but I wanted to get out of the car as soon as possible. And so this mindset, this value system, this kind of place that women have put themselves in has led men to reject them en masse. So the biggest reason, I believe, that this is happening is that women in the modern era have lied about what they truly want, which is a masculine man. They've lied about that. I can get everything myself. I don't need a man. I don't need someone to complete me. I love myself. It's a lie, I think. I think it's a lie. I think a lot of women lie about that. And I can understand why they lie about it, because this has been permeating for generations of women. Women do not want to admit, for the most part now, that what they truly want is a masculine man. They don't want to admit that because they believe it's like weak or something, or like anti-woman or something, which is so stupid. And shame on all the people who have, parroted this. But I think that is my biggest frustration, is that women are not honest about what they want. They say that they want one thing, but then they want another thing. I think that's the way a lot of men feel now, which has led them to being ostracized from a majority of men. So women also have issues they need to fix, but their question is different from the one that men do. I think men, it's an ownership question. I think for women, it is an honesty question. So I think men need to take more ownership, and I think women need to be more honest. I think if we fix that, we fix the whole dating market, to be honest with you. It's going to take a long time probably. And hopefully these AI matchmaking sites will kind of, again, take this out of my hands, because God knows I probably need this advice as much as anybody, but regardless. So for women, that honesty looks something like this. It is okay to say that you want a man. I will go one step further. It is okay to say that you need a man. It is okay that you want a masculine man, that you need a masculine man. A lot of women haven't heard that it's okay to say that. But a lot of women want that. A lot of my female friends, by the way, have told me that they want that. So what does that involve? It involves men being more masculine, and it involves women being honest about wanting masculinity. If that works, we fix the problem. But it keeps perpetuating itself because men have not taken ownership and women have not been honest. So, and because women have made themselves more masculine, they have seen men as a threat to their existence, which is clearly not the case. Men and women do not compete David Buss talks about this a lot too. Like the theory that men and women compete with one another is so stupid. It's like if you watch one WNBA game, you see this. If you watch one Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese back and forth, women tear each other down so much. Men tear each other down so much. And it's really unfortunate because women should support women. Men should support men. So what women need to do is they need to lean into their femininity by appreciating masculinity, being honest about wanting masculinity, and relinquishing control about controlling this narrative of this outgrowth of neo-feminist garbage. And then I believe if they do that, they will thrive and they will succeed in the dating market. At least they'll do a lot better than they're doing now. So that's my theory, at least. Okay, so how can we get better? That's the biggest thing. How can we get better? I want to leave this with something actionable for both men and women. So we need to learn how to date better, clearly, on both men and women. We need to learn how to date better. So given all this information, how can we get better at dating as a culture, as men and as women? So I have come up with, I think, 5 things that can be helpful. And I think, if you have anything else, put it in the comments. I'd love to, see if you guys have better ideas than you, because you probably do. So when I was coming up with these, they're all going to sound very simple because most of the stuff is simple when you break it down. It's been complicated by people who want to make it complicated, I think. But the first thing is when it comes to dating, ignore literally everybody. Ignore literally everybody. Because everybody has an idea. Everybody has a theory. Ignore me, by the way. If you think that my ideas are BS, ignore me. I don't care. But you must get all the noise outside of your life when it comes to dating. There's so much noise in the dating world now. So much of it. So ignore most of it. Because most of it is nonsense. Most of it is garbage. Most of it is unhelpful. All these influencers out there. What are you influencing? Probably people to be single and not find success in a romantic relationship. Probably. I'm going to put the emphasis on that. So, ignore everybody. Shut out the noise. Get quiet. Get focused on what you need to do. Secondly, put your locus of control inside yourself, not outside yourself. Men and women, right here. So again, men have an ownership problem. Women have an honesty problem. So, when you put your locus of control inside of yourself, not outside of yourself, you will find that you will probably improve your chances a lot better. Because you're not going to get anywhere by blaming the world and saying that the world sucks. You're not going to get anywhere. You just won't. So, take it on yourself to become better and to put yourself in a position to succeed. And do not outsource it to anybody. Do not move your position outside to any other outside body. Don't let women influence that if you're a man. Let men influence it if you're a woman. Get yourself better first. Do not put the ownership on everyone else to change you. Use it to change yourself. That's the only way you can fix it. It's the only way. Number 3, brainwash yourself with value-oriented ways of living and thinking. So once you clear out the garbage of our influencer class, once you clear that out, you put your locus of control back inside of yourself, brainwash yourself with your values. Make that your guiding compass. This poster over here on my wall, get one of those for yourself. Brainwash yourself with value-oriented ways of living and thinking. Get around value-oriented people who want the best for you. Do not wait. Do not think that people are going to affirm you or something. You got to do it yourself. You have to find your set of values and get around to things that actually move the needle, which are your values. Number 4, surround yourself with people that match those values. If you're around people, again, I alluded to this earlier on the show, I'm so happy that right now the majority of my friends, it might be 51%, it's not much, are a big majority, but most of my friends are either married or in a romantic relationship that is leading to marriage. Studies show this. You are who you surround yourself with, no matter what that context is. If you're around a lot of married people, you're probably going to end up getting married yourself. If you're around a lot of single, nihilistic, neo-feminist red pill people, you're probably going to be that type of person. And as you've seen, hopefully, that is not a good way to be. It's not. So fix that. Fix that. Get around people that inspire you to push you to what you want, what you actually need. So if you want to date better, if you want to get married, get around people that are married and that date well. Don't surround yourself with people who affirm all of your bad stuff, who say that your worst self is acceptable. Get those people out of your life. Get them out now. Text them. In fact, don't text them. Block them. Get them out of your life. Shut out the noise, as we mentioned earlier. Get all of that garbage out of your life. Then, finally, fifth one, engage with the opposite sex in a brave and forthright fashion. Talking primarily to men here, but women as well. If you're a man, talk to women. Get involved with women. Serve in a church or in a volunteer group with women. Join a sports league with women. The only way you understand, because again, this dating crisis is really an understanding crisis. We talked about this earlier. If you understand the opposite sex more, if you understand men better if you're a woman, if you understand women better if you're a man, you'll be able to do better with that demographic, with that sex. Engage with the opposite sex in a brave and forthright fashion. It's going to be scary, probably. My guys out there especially, but for women as well. But you're not going to get better if you're a coward. Cowardice is the opposite of growth. If you are a coward, if you don't step up to the plate, if you don't take a chance, and I'm not telling you to ask anybody out, by the way, at least right off the bat. This is for people, you've got to walk before we can run here. Just say hi. Have a conversation. Again, women are not scary. Men are not scary. They're not. They're people. You're a person. You're no different from them from that regard. In fact, they'll probably be afraid of you too if you're afraid of them. It's kind of like we've entered this weird, again, it's a weird place we've entered. But that will lead you to have more opportunities in that regard. So that would be my recommendation. Those 5 things. Lead from a value-oriented place. Take ownership inside of yourself. Get around people with those values. Spur forward and engage bravely. If you do those things, you'll probably be okay. Thank you all for watching. Own the day. Open your mind. I'll see you next week.